Good afternoon. This is the Devar Torah on Parshas Shemini, and this year Parshas Shemini, the third Parsha in Vayikra, Sefer Vayikra, is also Shabbat HaChodesh, which is a Parsha, extra Parsha that's read, and there's a special Haftorah attached to it. In the last Shabbat before Rosh Chodesh, sometimes it comes out on Rosh Chodesh, Nisan, and this time, the way it's working out is Shabbat HaChodesh. It's also Birkat HaChodesh, the week we announce the coming of the new moon. And I would like to speak about both subjects here. Now, Shabbat HaChodesh. This commandment was given to us by Hashem as the first mitzvah we had to do. It was even before we got the commandments to prepare this Paschal lamb and all the mitzvahs leading up to the first Pesach when we were liberated. And the commandment works like this. I'm going to read it. V'yomer Hashem el Moshe el Aaron ba'aretz Mitzrayim lemor. Chodesh hazeh lechem Rosh Chodesh Rishon u'lechem Chodesh Shana. This month shall be for you the beginning of the month. It shall be for you the first of the months of the year. And then it goes on to the offering, talking about preparing the Pesach offering, which we're going to, which was to occur on the 14th of Nisan, before then shechted, slaughtered, and then prepared, roasted, and then was the first Pesach, which I'll be speaking about in another of our Torahs as we get close to Pesach. Now, the month of Nisan is the first of months. Now, what are we trying to achieve by that? First of all, let me go into the name of the month Nisan. If you look at the month of Nisan, as Rav Moshe Shapiro Zikman Tzaddik Lebracha explained, based on Yerushalmi, it is the first of the months, and there is a connection between it and that if you look at them, all the months of the year, there was 12 Hebrew months. In the leap year, there's 13, but they both have the name of Dar Aleph and Dar Bet. When we were taken into exile in Babylonia, they were all given different names. He quotes the pasuk from the Megillah Esther to establish this, and with one exception, that was the month of Nisan. Month of Nisan did not take on one of the Babylonian names. Now, why did he explain this? Is because Nisan was the name from the beginning, and it has a special significance because if you look at the and as he points out, it's also mentioned in Haggadah, it's very significant. He says, if you look at the gematria of the word Nisan, Nun, Yud, Shin, Samak Nun, it has the gematria of 170. Each Hebrew letter has a gematria. So Nun is 50, Yud is 10, Samak is 60, and Nun Sothid. If you do all the addition, you'll get to 170. Now that's the same as the gematria of Nisim, which means miracles. So in other words, Nisim is the name of Nisim, the month of miracles. That's why we use that name for the month. and that is also Nud Yud Samach Yud Mem, which also comes out to 170, saying Gematria, so therefore they are tied in. However, there is a look at one significance of that. Now, as is explained, there are some deeper things going on. Now I'm going to quote the Bnei Yissaschar, or as he's pronounced by some Bnei Yissaschar. And he also explains beyond that, that this month, this first of months that we have, has a deeper meaning because it is effectively sanctifying time. Now, if you look at it, time is the most impersonal of elements. You think about it, most impersonal of elements. We like to think we have some control over the environment. But one thing that we have no control over is time. It seems like a totally anonymous thing. From the view of Greek philosophers, and it permeates us even today, time is an impersonal element. Non-scientific teachings, which has a certain accuracy, is that, as Einstein said, time is the fourth dimension of the 3 dimensions of space. And on both the scientific and the Torah perspective, there is a certain accuracy to that. However, time is something that is controlled by Hashem. He permeates the time, he permeates the months. In other words, that is not done, and that is so embedded. Recognizing this most impersonal element of time is one of Hashem's products, and it's controlled by him, created by him, and controlled by him. This is a concept that the Greeks found so offensive in ancient times. In the times of the Hanukkah story, one of the mitzvahs that Antiochus III, the evil king, prohibited was sanctifying the month. Now, what is the significance of the month? The only one that truly, the only people that sanctify the months are the Jewish people. In fact, it's so we have a partnership with Hashem on this. We have such a partnership with Hashem in this that we the one year when the angels in the Gemara asked Hashem, when will Rosh Hashanah be, which is Rosh Chodesh Tishrei, the beginning of the year, many purposes. He said, ask my children, meaning ask the Sanhedrin, because that is something that Hashem has given us a partnership in. And that time is, we are based on a lunar solar calendar, which I'll explain in a second. So by giving us the first mitzvah of reckoning the months, that is showing that we are sanctifying the most impersonal elements as Hashem's, the concept of time. And now, the Bnei Yissaschar goes on to explain that first of all, it says, Chodesh Ezer Lachem, to you. Well, if it means to you, who doesn't it mean? It means all of the nations. Now, we talk about the 2 great lights. One of them was the sun and the moon, which gets reduced. That's a whole discussion itself beyond this, the scope of this Devar Torah. Fascinating topic, though. And he says that the second, that it's impossible, 14 of the first parak of Sefer Bereshis, that there will be the time for determining the Moedim, the holidays, the months, and all of that. And that's the job of the moon. And he gave established time to all of the months. Now, it's also telling us what is another significance, what it means it isn't the nations, because they have a calendar based strictly on the sun. Because it's based strictly on the sun, it's a fixed period. It looks very impersonal, 365 days. The earth goes around the sun like clockwork, or 365 and a quarter days, actually, which is why we have a leap day every 4 years. In any event, the people are not given that, because they count according to the sun. Now, the B'nai Ishmael do count the moon, however, they don't do it with the same fixed thing as we do. We keep it as a lunisolar calendar, so that the months won't drift. We add an extra month of Adar, 7 out of every 19-year cycle, so that we'll keep it in relative balance with the months of the sun. Now, that's one thing. Another thing is what we're doing even before Mitziat Mitzrayim. He wanted us to Mekadosh, again emphasize Mekadosh. He wanted us to Mekadosh the years and Mekadosh the months. So in other words, everything will be counted. Sminej Yissaschar explains from that time frame. Everything will be for then. It will show that Hashem is sanctioning everything. It's Mekadosh in years, it's Mekadosh in months, sanctifying them. And we do that. Now, you may say, well, we have no temple. You can't be witnesses witness the moon. However, Hillel II in the year 400 had a calendar sanctified by the Sanhedrin before the Sanhedrin was disbanded by the Romans. That we have calculated the calendar mathematically till the time of Zman Mashiach, when we'll have a third temple, and then we will then calculate it by the moon. Now, so those are the deeper significances, some of the significances of this. Now, looking at what connection does this have with the Parsha? Going on one level, very interesting, Rashi says, the 8th day, when the Mishkan is actually being sanctified, dedicated to Hashem, we see here that. When did all this happen? The 8th day is Rosh Chodesh Nisan. No surprise, because we're having one of the greatest miracles of all, Hashem dwelling among us in this Mishkan, in this sanctuary. And that is an open, greater manifestation than even the sanctifying of the years and the months, as significant that was in the Yetziat Mitzrayim, because we're switching into a new period. Even though the first 9 plagues, which had already occurred, had a obviously miraculous, an element that couldn't be explained according to the laws, so-called laws of nature. It was only with the death of the firstborn that with the 10th plague, Malchus Bokorim, that it was impossible to give it any so-called natural Teva explanation. And it's very apropos, because it originally was supposed to be on the 25th of Kislev, it was moved over. And if you look, the miracles, month of miracles, the beginning of calculation of time, all go on this day of Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So that is another factor. And that's the beginning of our Parsha, is a dedication of Mishkan on 8 days. The other Parsha, it's that we did last week, described all the preparations for 7 days of pre-sanctuary, sanctifying the Mishkan, the sanctuary. Now, on that 8th day, that's the first part of the Parsha, first half of the Parsha, this week's Parsha. The second half of the Parsha is that not only do we have to do that, which we call in worshiping by the Mishkan, we have to do it in our daily actions. And therefore, the second part talks about what is kosher to eat, what we're allowed to eat, which animals we're allowed to eat, birds and fish and what have you, sea creatures, and what we as a people are not allowed to eat. It then ends with some tumah depara, implications, spiritual purity and impurity. Now, what I'd like to focus on today is that 8th day, sanctification. It also had another significance. There were still traces of the sin of the golden calf, which was really a joint responsibility of both the people pressuring Aaron and Aaron submitting to that pressure, because he never foresaw the Egel Zahav, the golden calf, would be created. And he tried to do everything to limit its impact. However, Moshe realized that only he, in conjunction with Aaron, the korban that that Aaron makes to sanctify the Mishkan, is the final thing to neutralize the Egel Zahav, the golden calf. And it happens on this day. When Moshe and Aaron go into the Mishkan together, holy fire comes down and consumes his sacrifices, showing that we've been completely forgiven and that we're entering a new era. Now, having said that, it was a day of great celebration. However, it turned then into a day of tragedy because two of Aaron's sons, Nadab and Abihu, offered what's called a strange alien fire, and both of them were consumed by a fire of Hashem, and they died on the spot. Now, looking at this, one could think they were not high-level people; they were evil. But one has to understand it on a deeper level. First of all, even though the sin of Aaron, according to one explanation, even though the sin of Aaron had been forgiven, there was still a minor taint of it left with both Aaron and the people. And what happened is, otherwise, the Avera that they had admitted strange fire was either one of two reasons. It wasn't from the fire on the Mizbeach, or the other explanation is it was not offered. Hashem did not want it at all. It just wasn't commanded. And one did not take familiarity. And from there, we learn a deeper meaning of this whole thing. Even though there are some sources say that Nadab and Abihu were vulnerable for two reasons, because Aaron hadn't been totally forgiven. And secondly, they had gone up, even though they were not of the right age, they had gone up with Moshe, Aaron, and the 70 elders to our Sinai at the time that after the Torah had just been given. And that period of 7 days before Moshe was going to go up to the top of Sinai and be there for 40 days and 40 nights. Now, however, Aaron was obviously feeling the shock of this, the consequences of this. However, if one looks at it as explained by, and this is based on the explanation of the Or HaChaim in the following pasuk, when he was feeling bad, that maybe it was his sin, something that he had done. Aaron, Omer Moshe Aaron, Hu Asher Diber Hashem Lemor, B'Krov Kadesh Al Panei. Well, the Kaved Yadam Aran, and that translates to Moshe said, this is what Hashem says to me: I will be sanctified through or me, that I will be honored. Thus, I will be honored before the entire people. And Aaron was silent, which means, well, first of all, whatever Hashem sends, we have to accept. That's one level of explanation. But he felt better saying that it was a sanctification. Now, what does the sanctification mean? And who, first of all, what level would Nadav and Abihu? Moshe had known this before, that they were going to be sanctified. Mishkan was going to be sanctified. He hadn't told it to anybody, but there was a question of, he thought it meant him or Aaron would suffer. Now, Nadav and Abihu, you have to look at them. They were extremely righteous individuals. They were at such a level, because it says they were Kohanim. It says the sons of Aaron, the Zerachaim. And the second fact, that they were men of great deeds. And as it's the Chazal say in the Zohar, Midrashim in the Zohar, they were the equals of Moshe and Aaron. And why? As it says in the Zohar, Nadav and Abihu were on a very high spiritual level because of their deeds. So in other words, what it's telling us, they had great personal merit. They had great personal merit. And they obtained this merit by their great deeds, not just because they happened to be the sons of Aaron, though that was also very significant. The other two brothers weren't at that level. Now, who were these? So what they were such a great level, what Hashem meant to sanctify. What does that mean? He sanctified them by their deaths, because we saw in dealing with Nisan and the Shabbat HaChodesh, that Hashem was manifested through the Teva, through time, space. However, here we are seeing something that, in other words, Hashem's glory is among us in the Mishkan. However, because it didn't have all the higher level of glories of Hashem that you can see in the higher worlds, we might get too comfortable and taken for granted. So therefore, he had to Hashem showed his greatness by showing that no matter who you are, you must treat the Mishkan with proper respect, even if you're at the level of a Nadav and Abihu. And therefore, they were very special individuals. And that was the least treated. That means that his Mishkan was sanctified. Now, I'd like to finish this Nadav and Abihu. Was that the end of them? That was the end of anything they counted for? No, to show you what high-level individuals they were, as explained in the Shar Gugulim. They did two things. When Pinchas, I'm going ahead into Sefer Bamidbar, at the end of Sefer Parshas Balak, at the incitement of Balaam, the Jews commit averas with the Midianite women. 14,000 people die, not all committing that avera, but nobody else stopped them. Pinchas wanted to stop them because who wasn't participating in this? Zimri, who was one of the princes of the tribe of Shimon. And when he became terrified, they were there, the neshamas of Nadav and Abihu, to help him keep his neshama in there, and to sanctify and to allow him to stop the plague by killing Zimri and Cosby, who was the Midianite princess. In any way, so, but there's a question. So what happened is they combined with Pinchas in effect to allow him to do it. They then became Iburim of Pinchas. And by the way, Pinchas also is connected to Eliyahu Navi. All of this I will be explaining in Parshas Balak and in Parshas Pinchas in much greater detail. In any event, Pinchas, who eventually becomes Eliyahu Navi, becomes a combination of people. And who does he become? There's more than one neshama, one soul there. And Nadav and Avihu, became the Iburim of Pinchas, who was a combination of Yosef and Yithro. Again, I'll be discussing that in a future parsha. They were the Iburim. Now, the Iburim are neshamas that are sent to another neshama to help it, and only very extremely righteous people of a very great level are able to do that. And therefore, who was chosen for that? Pinchas was Nadav and Avihu. And in addition, there was another new nefesh, Eliyahu Tishbi, and without going into all the details, another neshama came into Eliyahu, who became Eliyahu, eventually became Eliyahu Hanavi. Nothing makes Eliyahu Tishbi. In any event, there's a question. The one is only allowed to have four neshamas together in the same body. One would be two Iburim, and Eliyahu and Eliyahu Tishbi would be five. It explains that Nadav and Abihu were one soul, was shared one soul in two bodies. In any event, it was so. In other words, it wasn't a sad event; it was a necessary event that had to occur, and it showed that ultimately, Nadav and Abihu dying, not only did it go on to greater things, it also showed that we have to have great respect for Hashem. We have to be, in other words, remember just how great He is, and we should take this thought into Rosh Chodesh Nisan, the month of Nisan, as we're preparing for Pesach and the Seder and all the accompanying miracles. We should take all of these things that I've been speaking about today, add them into give them a good opening and preparation for the coming events of the Pesach. And I would like to wish everybody good Shabbos, Shabbat Shalom, and beginning of next week, Rosh